Danny Kruger.
Thank you very much indeed, Mr. Deputy Speaker. And I want to start by saying how much I agree with what the Minister said earlier about the government's plans for this. It's a very good thing that we have cross-party consensus on the need to radically reform leasehold, and I recognise and agree with the points that have been made by honourable members on all sides. It is a feudal system which needs to be ultimately abolished, but in ways that I'm going to come on to describe. I think there is a danger, perhaps on our side of the House, which is that we leap straight from one extreme to another, and we do have a bit of a fetish, we Conservatives, for property ownership. And I think there is a small danger of us making a cult of freehold and of the principle of owning one's house outright. Because and I understand why we do this, we all want to own our homes. We believe that a free market will help to grow the supply of new homes, which we urgently need. But there is a limit on the supply of new house building, and that limit is land. And yes, it is possible to release more land into the market, and we need to do that. But there do need to be limits. I think even the most, well, I hope even the most extreme libertarians on our side will recognise there must be limits to the release of land for house building. And so the free market must have some limitations, and because a free market without limits, or with limits which companies with deep pockets can simply game at the expense of local communities, is not a free market at all. It's a speculator's charter. And so we need a better system, either than the feudalism of freehold, but also better than the perversion of capitalism that we sometimes get and we see in our communities. So we do need to grow supply, and I recognise we need more freehold, more traditional ownership. But as I say, Mr. Deputy Speaker, land is finite, and the price of a house that we all worry about is really the price of the land underneath the house. And there are two effects of this. First is that the building, the bricks and mortar itself, hardly matters to the house builders. We see the way they knock up buildings without beauty, without quality, without much innovation. I want to quickly pay tribute to my honourable friend, the member for South Norfolk, and the work he's done, talking about self-build and the opportunities for far better innovation, beauty and quality in house building if we actually recognise that the quality of the structure itself matters more than the land it's built on. And of course the second effect of the system we have at the moment, whereby the price of the land is the real factor, is that the overall price of housing rises, as we know it does, and we're now at the highest house prices in history. And of course that has a reinforcing effect because it privileges the volume house builders, the speculators in land who can afford to bid at these auctions, bet on rising prices, they hoard sites, they hold back land for development, they game the development system. Mention in passing the egregious 5-year land supply rule, which is such a gift to developers riding roughshod over local plans and the wishes of local communities. And there are a number of cases in my Wiltshire constituency of devizes where this is a particular problem. I have to give way.
I'm grateful to my honourable friend. And can I add one point, which is not one he's making, with regards to discordant? I think people ought to know the sums that public affairs companies and lobbyists get paid by the developers and those involved in exploiting leaseholders and those who actually buy freeholds, in lobbying the Prime Minister's office, the Treasury, the Department and the media. If they could have equal resources given to the National Leaseholders Campaign, to the cladding groups, to Leasehold Knowledge Partnership, we'd have equality of arms.
Well, my right honourable friend is absolutely right. It is a shameful thing, the way that these companies operate. So I've said that the price of land is the issue, and there is a way to get through this, Mr. Deputy Speaker, and it's along the lines that we're debating today. Not leasehold, not pure freehold, but a form of common hold. But I want to end by mentioning a particular form of common hold, which I think we'd like to see more, I would like to see much more of, and we see a little of around the country. My right honourable friend, member for West Worthing, mentioned the need for housing providers that can be trusted, and they do exist, and they actually exist using leasehold, and that is the community land trust model, who act as long-term stewards of community housing, and they often use ground rents as a way to finance their work with the consent of leaseholders. So I think we need to worry about scrapping leasehold without replacing it. That would be bad. We need to replace it with something along the lines of being discussed, of common hold. And around the country we see these brilliant innovations in pockets in rural areas, in urban areas of community land trusts. Now the government has indicated in previous debates that any ban on leasehold would include an exemption for community-led housing, and I hope that that consideration that consideration will be given to ensuring that any changes to leasehold, any replacement with common hold, ensures that community-led housing is also protected. And I pay tribute particularly to the Community Land Trust Network. And the Secretary of State came to an event that I hosted in Parliament a few months ago. A whole number of really inspiring CLT groups came to talk about their experience. And so I want to encourage the government to listen to the CLT network, to use the consultation to the NPPF that's going on to make real changes, to extend the Community Housing Fund, which we'd like to see reopened, and crucially, we need to help local CLT groups, community groups, to buy land. At the moment, they find it so difficult to outbid the speculative developers because they intend to have a large proportion of the housing affordable. They simply can't make the numbers add up in a way that the speculators can. So we need to find ways to give more land to CLTs. And my suggestion is quite simple. We need to transfer public land quite deliberately to community land trusts. We need to change the legislation or specify the legislation which at the moment states that public land owners who want to divest themselves of those assets need to seek best consideration, which often local authorities or other public landowners interpret as simply seeking the highest price. We need to specify that best consideration really means the objects set out by the Secretary of State, which I suggest would include affordability and community ownership. And we also need to enable CLTs to buy private land at agricultural prices, not speculative prices. So I welcome the cross-party consensus on reforming leasehold. I think that's absolutely right. I hope that consideration will be given to ensuring that these community-led housing models will also be protected in the new plans and that they'll be able to thrive. I welcome the debate, and I give thanks to the Shadow Secretary of State and to members opposite who are campaigning along with members on this side for these sorts of reforms. And I share my honourable friend's wish that we don't push this rather partisan motion to a vote. Thank you.
Helen Hayes.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Speaker.